Hopefully you've finished watching Ju-on Origins if you're here, because this video will be full of spoilers. Something you may have noticed while watching the latest addition to the Ju-on franchise is that it attempted to reference far more real-life events than previous movies in the series. This show promoted itself as an even more truthful rendition behind the real-life events that inspired the Ju-on movies. Setting aside the validity of that statement, the show does at the very least reference several real-life events, so let's take a look at them. A quick warning before we begin though. Many of these references come from real-life crimes, and some of them were truly horrific. If you're uneasy with such matters, it would be a good idea to turn back now. Now, onto the list. Number 1. The Yellow House. I've done a video on the Yellow House before, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that out for yourself for more details. In short, the house that the Ju-on movies were said to be inspired by was a real-life place known as the Yellow House. This house was said to curse all who stepped foot inside it, much like its movie counterpart. The house no longer exists, but you can still find it in old Google Street View photos. And, as you may have noticed, the house used in Origins was a lovely shade of yellow. Nice. Number 2. The phone incident. This is likely the one reference many outside Japan won't get on first viewing. In the 4th episode, Keiichi kills his pregnant wife and cuts the baby out of her stomach. He later returns and, bizarrely, finds the home telephone inside her open stomach. I've seen numerous people have been confused by this, and that's not surprising. This bizarre move was based on a real-life crime that took place in Nagoya in the late 1980s. A heavily pregnant woman was attacked in her own home and killed. Her unborn child was then cut from her stomach and replaced with a nearby telephone. Her husband returned home to find the baby alive and crying on the floor, and his wife, bizarrely, with a phone where the baby should have been. The killer in this case was never found, and the case created such a ruckus that the father and son eventually had to move overseas to escape it. So if you're wondering why there was a phone in there, it was a bit of an Easter egg referencing a real-life crime. Number 3. Furuta Junko's murder. This was the first of several real-life events mentioned in the series as framing devices for the various years the story takes place over. During the 2nd episode, you can hear a news report in the background that mentions a teenage girl, Sakura, has been found dead inside a concrete drum, and several youths were arrested for the crime. The show uses an alias because all the participants were underage at the time, but the crime being referenced was the brutal kidnapping and murder of 17-year-old Furuta Junko in late 1988. She was held captive and tortured for 40 days by 4 teenage boys, before they finally killed and dumped her body in a drum full of concrete. The brutal nature of this crime and the horrific length of time that the boys kept and tortured her shook Japan, which is undoubtedly why the writers chose this particular case to highlight what year the story was taking place. Number 4. The Matsumoto Gas Attack. As the show moves on to 1994, another real-life crime can be seen mentioned on the TV as the child protection officer waits in the hospital. This one references the Matsumoto Gas Attack as carried out by the cult Aum Shinrikyo. This crime was carried out on the night of June 27, 1994. 8 people were killed and over 500 injured as Aum used the incident to test how effective the sarin gas they had manufactured was. And as you no doubt already know, this wasn't the last attack they would carry out, which we'll get to shortly. Number 5. The Great Hanshin Earthquake. As the show moves into 1995, it kicks off with some news footage of the Great Hanshin Earthquake, which occurred on January 17, 1995. Over 6,000 people died in this earthquake that happened right at the start of the year, so it's no surprise they used this incident to move the show into 1995. But it wouldn't be the last incident from this year either. Number 6. The Tokyo Subway Sudden Gas Attack. This attack is no doubt the most famous of all of Aum Shindiko's crimes. 9 months after they carried out the Matsumoto attack, Aum released sarin gas in 5 coordinated attacks around the Tokyo subway on March 20th, 1995. 12 people were killed, 50 severely injured, and over 1,000 people suffered temporary vision problems. The sheer scale of this attack made this crime news all over the world, and fittingly, the show gives it a little more attention than the others, zooming in and letting you see real images from the crime. Number 7. The Kobe child murders. The final real-life reference can be found in the 1997 section of the show. Again, in the background you can hear a news report of a head being found by a school gate. This is, of course, a reference to the Kobe child murders. On March 16th, 2007, a 14-year-old boy killed an 11-year-old, cutting his head off and leaving it by the boy's school gate for fellow students to find on their way into school that day. This was another crime that became worldwide news due to the horrific brutality of it and the young age of both the murderer and his victims. The Kobe child killer later admitted to killing a 10-year-old girl as well. And those are 7 real-life references that you may have missed in Ju-on Origins. If you noticed any other references or Easter eggs, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. And I'll see you again next time.